Peace and welcome everyone to What's Up Roadie? How you doing? I'm Noelle Jordan, creator and executive producer for What's Up Roadie. In my career, I am a live event and touring lighting designer and stage manager. What's Up Roadie was created as a safe space for the 12 million strong live entertainment and theatrical professionals. This is a place for us to come and talk it out about how this global pandemic has affected our careers, our lives, and essentially our mental well being. Whether we're missing the production life or looking for new careers, this is a space that we will talk it out. We'll talk it out. Today, we're joined by an amazing panel and mental health advocate. I encourage everyone to engage in the live chat here on Protest Party. And in today's episode, we will focus and we will shift now to Broadway and off-Broadway. We're going to theater. Today, our moderator is Mrs. Danielle Camilla Thomas Banks. Danielle is an actress, singer, dancer with a BFA from Howard University and a classical training from BADA at Oxford University in London. She started professional work in Spike Lee's Crooklyn and has done other television and film work. She's been on Broadway, off-Broadway, and was currently in the North American touring company of the Broadway musical Come From Away when the pandemic hit, and I know she awaits the return of getting to the stage. Thank you, Danielle. How are you?
Thankful to you, Noelle, for giving us this platform to be able to have the conversation, because that's so needed on so many levels and so many different topics. But for now, we're going to talk about our love for theater, which is where I live and love. And so to open up, we're first going to start with the wonderful Dr. Rogi Banks. Rogi Banks hails from Howard University, where she has 2 degrees, not just one. And she started working with children. She started working as a child at 13, and her passion is mostly to help with the advancing of youth development with the emphasis on arts-based education. We are excited to have you here, Dr. Rogi Banks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How do you feel?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
We're excited to have you here. Next up, we have Patrick Breen. How are you, Patrick?
I'm good, thank you.
Patrick is a writer and an actor. He was performing in Richard Greenberg's latest play, The Perplexed, at Manhattan Theater Club on March 13th. Then theaters closed. Other plays, Normal Heart and Next Fall, on Broadway as well. We're happy to have you, Patrick.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I really love the idea of talking with people in the community, and because it's been such an isolating time. And anyway, I'm just really excited to have this chat.
Excited to have you too. Moving on, we have the lovely Johanna upon. Johanna is very extravagant because she hails from 2 different places. Her birthplace was in Singapore and right here in New York. And we're excited to have her. She is a costume and sometimes scenic designer in theater, film, dance, and opera. She is amazing, and we're happy to have you here, Johanna. Are you happy to be here? Anything to add?
Very happy to be here.
Yeah.
Happy to have you join the conversation. Moving on to another lovely lady, we have Dembrow. Dembrow has been working in this business for 20 years. So I know she's feeling the strain of not being able to do the work. I'm sure it's worn off, that we've gotten a break, and now we are feeling strained, correct, Beth?
Yeah.
She's previously worked at the Lincoln Center for years, a flea theater, where she served as general manager and managing director. And where are you currently working now, Beth?
MCC Theater.
And she's proud of it. We're happy to have you here. Anything to add?
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. Also, like Patrick, really looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
And last, but certainly not least, which I'm sure you guys will witness in the next hour, we have Christopher Burris here. He is an acting coach, director, and photographer, and he is residing in my place of birth, Brooklyn, New York. Patrick, Christopher, is there anything you would like to tell us? Because you have a lengthy, wonderful bio, but what is the most important thing you want the people to know about yourself?
What I want people to know is that currently I am a professor at Pace University as well as LaGuardia Community College. And I am happy to be here, be a part of the conversation and figuring out what we need to do to heal and to get ourselves right and to use the arts to do it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Before we go any further, I just want to mention honorably that we are excited to be using this platform, the Protest Party, which is amazing. This platform is, as you guys can see, as you're watching right now, it doesn't just have this session that you're looking at right now. Along the bottom, you'll probably also see that there are live protests right now being streamed. You'll see the footage. It's not going to be the audio, but you will see like the B-roll of actual protests going on right now, which are important and which are needed, and we support them. And you can see them along the bottom. It's not going to disturb us, but it's just mentioned. It's just obvious right there, which I think is really, really awesome. So we're so grateful and thankful to be a part and to be using this platform of Protest Party TV. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get ready and let's start to have this conversation. This conversation right now is dealing with Broadway and Off-Broadway because we are dealing with the arts. And there are a lot of different mediums of art. But right now we're talking about Broadway and Off-Broadway. This is a question I would like to pose first. What is the process of Broadway and the theater when the lights go off and the road stops? What has it been for you? What does it mean for you? Who wants to go first?
I'll start if you'd like.
Sure.
The process was pretty fast. I mean, I think there was an usher at Moulin Rouge on Broadway who tested positive for the COVID virus, like March 10th, maybe. And then we kept hearing rumors, things were going to close. The Broadway theater was going to close. I was in an off-Broadway theater at the time, about 500 seats, something like that. And the general manager and the artistic director came down and spoke to us on March 13th. I think that was a Thursday. That might be the 12th. I'm not sure. And they said, you can go home or you can do one more performance tonight. And then we're closing the theater. It was that fast. And we voted and we said, let's do one more show. And the audience was like, half of them didn't come. So it was like a half house. It's like, if we ever get back to 50% or 25%, it was like our last show, it was 50%, and there was a lot of spaces between seats because people already knew something was coming, and they knew that they probably maybe don't sit next to each other or something. And so we did the final show and went home, and that was 6 months ago already. And so that process has just been, we just sort of call each other and go like, I talked to Bernie Telsey, who's the artistic director at Manhattan Theater Club where Beth works, and go like, what's everybody talking about? And it's April maybe. And then I read something Dr. Fauci said November of next year because he thinks that's when people will feel comfortable. He wasn't even suggesting that that's the right time. He just thinks
when people
audiences won't feel comfortable until November, a year and 2 months away. So I hope that's not the case. And I hope it comes back sooner. But of course, only if we're safe, only if there's a safe way to do it, but I'm all for half houses.
Anything. Because the audience by now sometimes is just my dog, and that's fine for me too. Yes.
Right.
What about you?
It's just me. I have 3 birds, so they have to hear me.
You still beat me. What about you? What was yours?
I think the experience definitely was depended a lot upon if you were working in the moment. So when it happened, I had just finished a gig in Chicago and was just teaching and preparing for the next thing. And so it hit my class immediately. We had just started the semester at LaGuardia. I had 3 classes with my students. And then all of a sudden everything went virtual. And this is an acting class. So having to figure out instantly on the spot how to communicate the needs and how to make sure that we kept the work going. But as a professional, it didn't really hit me until I started to miss stuff. You know, it didn't start to hit me until it was like, oh, wait a minute, that project I was counting on that should be starting right about now isn't starting. So the experience of it was lots of ups and downs, just in terms of like different moments of processing and sort of having a moment to go like, wait a minute, what's happening right now? Where am I? Okay, I'm not working. Okay, cool. 5 months? Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah. I have a question to ask you, Christopher, about your students. A lot of them are wanting to take part in this art and craft that could even seemingly look like it may see its demise. I knock on wood, that's not going to happen. But what has been, you know, the feedback from some of the students when you were in school and then now that stopped? Like, what is happening for them? Like, we're feeling it because we can't get to do it, but they're like, we may not even get the opportunity to start to do it. Like,
Yes.
what's happening for the students? And
there's a lot of anxiety. I will be honest. They're very, very anxious. And so I view a part of my responsibility now to reframe it for them, because I think that we're at the beginning of something new. We don't know what's going to happen when things come back to full, but we know that there's going to be something different. We know that there are going to be paradigm changes that we can't anticipate necessarily. So I'm trying to reframe it for my students to say, you're at the beginning of learning something new at a time in which the entirety of the art form is also undergoing a seismic shift, you know, but trying to make that okay, trying to help them see that we still have the possibility to prepare them as artists for what they want to create down the path in the future.
what about you, Beth? What has the experience been on your side?
It's been stressful. I mean, similar to, you know, Patrick was in an off-Broadway theater at the time. So at MCC, we had 2 shows that were impacted by this. We were in the middle of performances for one, and we were about to go into technical rehearsals for the other. And it happened so fast. We found out Broadway was shutting down and we could perform one more show if we wanted to. And so we did one last performance on that Thursday. We did not go into tech for the show that had just been rehearsing and had finished their final run in the room that day.
Wow.
Yet the set was loaded in, the lights were focused, everything was up in the theater. And it felt like a rush to get actors to get their stuff to be able to leave the theater. And it was also like we had to think about not just the actors and the people and the crew and those people involved with the shows we weren't doing, but how was our staff? What did we have to do to take care of our staff to get them to be able to work remotely? And it all happened quite, like, we did feel like it was coming, we just didn't know when. So it was sort of felt like that first month or so was quite frenetic and stressful and trying to figure out what we do in a very undefined situation.
Johanna, what about you? You say that, you know, you're between home and here with your other home. How did this work out for you? Like, how was the shutdown, the lights going off, and have you been able to travel? Has it even been a thing? What has your experience been?
So this past spring, I was actually finishing graduate school and I was working at the same time. So I was actually in the middle of working on Take Me Out at Second Stage, and I was shopping on the show. So it was a very similar experience. Like, we had rooms full of clothing, and especially in a modern show, you feel like there's so much shopping that happens. And suddenly, you know, you have all this stuff that you have to return before all the stores close down. And there was this feeling of panic of like, you know, like, what if we don't get all of this stuff back in time? Because then our companies are out thousands of dollars on all of these clothes that suddenly we can't return. And so there was a lot of panic around that. Because I was in graduate school and working at the same time, I actually chose to finish out the rest of my semester in the States. And I think like in probably around June, I came back to Singapore. So after that happened, I had to do quarantine, government mandated quarantine in a hotel here for 2 weeks. So it was 2 weeks of no fresh air and no contact with the outside world. And then I've been since released out into the human population. But traveling was also kind of terrifying because there was a sense of everyone not knowing, like how you can't sit closely together. The plane was empty. The air stewards were in hazmat suits. It just was a very trippy experience to like be flying internationally, in this moment, for sure.
Do you foresee coming back when?
That's a good question.
Good question, right?
I mean, yeah, so it kind of depends. I was working on I had 7 shows lined up for the summer that were all postponed or canceled. If they do happen next summer as planned, then the goal to come back would be March.
Okay.
Yeah.
That brings me to my next question. Patrick, you brought up when we would come back based off of what Broadway is saying, and then what Dr. Fossey is saying, but it's all about, do you guys feel that live arts is an essential element? My husband, I'm here in Georgia, even though I'm from New York, and that's where I would have come back home to from the tour. My husband was here and he was going to join me on tour. And so we've been here. We're going to actually go to New York in a month. But I'm here in Georgia because everything gets shut down. So I just stay right here because his job as a factory worker is essential.
Yeah.
Do you feel that our medium of theater and live theater is essential as well? I'd like to hear your take on that.
Oh my God, absolutely. I do think it's essential. It is essential.
And tell us why.
I will. We're going to be the last group of people to work because not because it's not essential, but because it involves crowds. It involves groups of people being in close quarters. It's I get very romantic about why I think it's essential, and it's because I think the arts heal, they teach, they inspire, they change, and does someone who is not involved in the arts feel that way? I don't know. I just know for me, it is part of what makes me me. Seeing other people, seeing other performers, seeing other work live. I like reading and I like watching movies and television, stuff like that. But seeing people doing things in that ephemeral, one-time way is so electrifying to me, and so it's I won't be that articulate about it, but that is how I feel, and maybe someone else can jump in and help.
I'd love to, yeah.
Yes.
I think Patrick is really, kind of touching on that. So to answer the initial question, like what happened when everything shut down, I'll share from an audience perspective. And
that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, as a person who loves to frequent off-Broadway shows because of that very reason, that connection. I mean, a movie is nice. Watching the kids do TikTok is nice, but at some point we're all getting tired of the screen. There's something about being in the space that is truly healing. Like I said, they're telling a story and you're able to process your feelings in a way when you're at a show, a live art show, that you cannot when you're watching TV. I've definitely spent some time catching up on Moesha on Netflix, right? That was a favorite show of mine. There's nothing like, it doesn't take the place of being able to go into the theater and not only connect with the actors and the story that is being told, but with the other patrons. We miss that. Mm-hmm. So as someone who, I don't perform anymore, but since performing, I've gone and again, it's a culturally sensitive way, right? Because I work with a population of people where mental health is stigmatized. And so going to a counselor, going to a therapist is not their coping mechanism of choice. Sometimes going to a play is how they get their life. Going to a concert is how you get your life. Going to church in ways, that's live art too, is how you get your life. And so we're not able to do that right now. We're just as devastated.
I completely agree with both Patrick and Rogi and what's just said, and we'll add that live theater and the arts are about community as well. So it's vital, but it's the community of audience and actor and creator and, you know, everybody who comes in the door of that space. And I wouldn't have the job I have or do what I do if I hadn't been exposed at a really young age and watched live shows, whether it was a music show or like a kid's concert that my parents took me to, or theater. I grew up with this being my passion, and I do think it's vital. I think it forms who people are and how they view things, and I think it challenges people, and I think, you know, there's a reason there's a movement for funding, and there's a vitality. And it's unfortunate that because the nature of the business is gathering and being in a crowd with other people, we will be the last to open up. But if we're not vital, I don't know what is, other than, you know, healthcare workers and people really saving lives. But the arts are vital.
Yeah,
live theater.
Okay.
Yes.
Having something live, you can't recreate that. I was fascinated by that as a young person. I would see shows more than once and see a different performance, and you don't get that anywhere else.
You know, I feel like also something that everyone, I mean, I think like I've seen my friends sharing is this idea that in this time of darkness, everyone has turned to the arts. And it's that we think that we're not vital, but in order to get through quarantine, everyone had to watch something, read something, listen to music, and find some way to channel all of that emotion, that grief that we were feeling, that anxiety that we were feeling, and sharing that with someone else via watching something or experiencing something together. And so, you know, to say that we're not vital is completely crazy, because you could, if you lived your life without art and without theater, you would not be able to process your emotions. You wouldn't be able to understand what's going on in the world around you. It just would be so difficult to deal with all of these things, and you wouldn't know what to do. So absolutely, we're vital.
I mean, no one in this quarantine would make it if it wasn't for all. I mean, we're not even talking about live theater. If we just talk about the arts in general, I'm astounded that they're not helping out all of these unemployed artists, because without us, most of you would not have been able to make it. Everyone's sitting in front of their TV. Everyone's listening to music. Everyone's watching movies. You're using the arts to sustain you. So we need to be sustained too, because we're losing the chance to be able to do what we want to do. And that's just on film and radio and TV. But if we push it to another level, when we talk about theater, I think that not only is it important, I think that I understand, because of this virus that's caused this pandemic, it's terrifying. But because of all that's going on in society, because we're shut down, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, systemic racism, all of the things that are pushed in our faces, and we didn't have any choice but to deal with it because we were stagnant. Things like that, theater helps. I've done two of the shows that I've done that mean so much to me are so powerful with people. One is Avenue Q. Like, we would watch at the intermission, we'll see people leave and be over it, or we'll see people talk, because we had puppets going at it, having sex, and made you not be uncomfortable about sexuality or homosexuality. And then we had puppets talk about racism, which people weren't, you know, wanting to talk about. We were talking and bringing to light stuff that will make people uncomfortable. And because you were in a room with people seeing the same thing at the same time, you could see the audiences changing and friends becoming friends who would never really be friends because of what's happening, because of live theater. The same thing would come from away. We were dealing with a tragedy, which is right now happening with this pandemic, but it's how we made it positive. If we can take the loss of all of these lives and what it's done to our system, of the way we function in the government, the way we have been functioning in the past, and because we've had this pause, now we have time to look at it, see the things that we can do to change and be better. You know, within our community, what can we do for people of color? What can we do to unite us? I think that, yes, it's essential, not only because of just like other mediums like TV and film, but live theater evokes feelings and change in a way that can actually bring about change. So I 100% agree that it's essential. Now,
well, it's the closest thing to religion, really. Which some people think is controversial, but I'm a little fortunate in that when I was in high school, went to high school in South Holland, Illinois, and in the back of our house was a Presbyterian church. whose pastor happened to become one of my best friends in high school. And once a month, he would have us come in to sing musical numbers from theater to the sermon. So to have somebody who is leading this who understood the importance of it and wanted to bring them together was an incredible learning experience for me, and allowed me to see the connection between the two. I don't think that there's anything else that we can compare that comes close to what we get from church, what we get from going and congregating together. The closest thing that we can come to that kind of uplift, to that kind of energetic shift, is the theater. Yep. There's nothing else that comes even close. So
I agree.
Right
now
on.
that we're talking about theater, you have something you want to add, Beth?
No, I was sort of applauding the state.
He needs no help. I'm just kidding. I'm just seeing that we're talking about theater. We've noticed that now even we started to see theater be streamed, like the success of the film Hamilton. I want to hear your take on how you feel about, both from the audience and the actors receiving these filming performances and airing them through streaming platforms. And I want to know, do you think that it takes away from the theater experience? Again, this is a safe space to say what you need to say. Let's hear what you got to say, because I know I got some thoughts. Let's hear what you had to say.
I definitely was not able to afford to go see Hamilton either at the Public or on Broadway. So, and even as someone who works in the arts, I think that's always like really frustrating, is that when there's something that you yourself can't afford to go see, there's so many shows that I haven't seen, but precisely because there's still a price point on them and I can't afford as an artist to continue subsidizing the art that I do.
Here.
So there was something kind of magical about being able to watch it after having listened to it ad nauseum for a while when it first came out, and to like finally see the visualization of it, because that's like the other mistake. I'm a very visual person, clearly, so it was really beautiful to actually be able to see that. There's something democratic about the fact that it is streamed that way, and I think the same way with like all of the National Theater stuff that's being streamed right now that was streamed for free or on Broadway HD, like the fact that they were giving out free subscriptions, all of that did feel incredibly democratic, and it felt like people all over the world now were able to watch something. And I just remember, like, even as a child, in Singapore, we were watching bootlegs of Legally Blonde or Wicked or all of these things on YouTube, because that's the only way you had access to some of those things. Not all of those shows came on tour to Singapore. So, it was really great to be able to see some of these things. But at the same time, I mean, I don't think it takes away from it, because I still want to see Hamilton. I still want to be in the room where it happened. I still want to actually be live. I think it satisfies something in you to be able to see it for now, and like it just like gives you like a little bit of it, but it's still going to be completely different with live actors in the room. Like, it's not going to be the same show, and to be able to react and laugh and cry in the moment during Satisfied, like that's just, something I'm still looking forward to do. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
I don't know if I use the word take away so much. I regard what's happening in that transition in the same way when it comes to books and film. When a student tells me, I've seen that, I saw the movie, but did you read the book? Because at the end of the day, that does matter. Reading the book is a different experience than watching the movie. And I feel the same way about the shows. When I think about one that I would love to watch that was streamed away, The Wiz. I remember when they turned that into a major production, it was beautiful seeing, but it's not the same as when I saw it in live theater. It just was not. So I would just encourage patrons, at the end of the day, please enjoy, Hamilton while we have it, at our fingertips and on the screen. But certainly let's not make that the trend once the doors do open, that, oh, why don't we just stream, forget live theater. That is what I hope doesn't happen. Yes. So I won't say take away, but let's just make sure that, we are still recognizing that it's two different, it's been presented in two different ways, and we need to respect and embrace them both.
I think that that's the key. Like I think that it's different. I don't know what the word for it is, but in my opinion, it's not. If the artist can't receive energy in the moment, then it's not theater, right? Like it can be a play and I'm watching a play, but if that artist can't receive my energy back in the moment, it's not theater, it's something else. So I think that there's a definite value, like everyone has said, in seeing all of these shows, but understanding that it's a different experience, because in a theatrical experience, you're bringing your full self into the space, right? Your entire body is there. If I don't want to pay attention, or if I don't want to engage, I have to intentionally go out of my way to disengage if I'm in the space. If I'm at home, you got to work extra hard to get my feet involved in whatever story you're telling.
Yeah.
And that difference, I just don't think it can be compared.
And I'm sorry, I want to add on to that, Christopher. The same way as an audience member, we have to bring our full selves. When you come to a theater show, there are just certain things that you don't do, that we see people do in a movie theater. Oh my God, girl, what you do? Yelling at the screen. That doesn't happen in theater, right? You are there and you are really just taking it all in, and it becomes a personal journey in a way that I don't have that personal journey at home when I'm watching theater that's
because you can pause it and go get something. You know what I mean?
Right.
You lose a little bit of it. That was my take on it. I'd seen Hamilton 3 times because I Avenue Q and them had the same people. I still had to pay a lot of money, but I could get a ticket. It wasn't just how much it cost, it was just to get it. I was not trying to believe the hype either. I'm like, I love theater, but this is too expensive. Y'all tripping. I cannot do it. And I tell you, when I was in that room where it happened, it literally was amazing, which is why I went to see it, multiple times. And I was so excited for when it was streaming.
They had the best of everything. They had the best designers. I mean, as a theatrical experience, I saw the second act, not the first act. Don't ask me how.
I know how.
Don't ask me how. That's not your business. And that's not the point. The point is that.
Oh my goodness.
But you know what I mean? Like,
yes, I know. Yeah. That's how I felt. It was amazing. And now look, I'm excited about it. I was so excited. I had a TT date night for all my nieces and nephews to sit down and get to see some live theater. And it was exciting to see my friends on screen. And I thought that I would be watching it all the time, because I had listened to the soundtrack like leading up to it. I just couldn't get ready. And then my family was like, if you're going to sing like this when the show is on, we're going to have a problem. So I was just so excited, and I loved watching it. It was great. And it was just like a token for me to remember what it was. But this is from all of us who love the arts. My concern is that it's going to be enough for people who are not that exposed to the experience of live theater. And one, they're going to miss it, because as great as it was to see it, it does not compare at all to what it was in the room. And I don't care if there was a mistake happening, which I wouldn't even have noticed. Nothing about live theater is something that you miss when you're there in the moment. And something about TV, where you're going to probably work on the sound. I want to hear you crack, because that's what a voice does sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And half the times when you're witnessing something firsthand, you're not paying attention to that crack. It's gone in the next moment. Like the live theater, like you said, that energy that you're getting from the stage, and it's that reciprocity from the audience to the performers. I'm so scared that we're going to start getting used to this, and it's going to be something that we're relying on. And so I hope not.
So bad.
I hope not too, but I also think it's worth saying that I don't think every show can do a filmed thing like Hamilton did, with like top notch of the line cinema quality. It's not your B-roll from the back of the house. And I think, it's not a flat, theater's not a two-dimensional thing that's actually meant to be seen on a screen. So like wherever they chose to put a close-up, I might have been looking somewhere else in the theater. So, like I like to always watch the ensemble sometimes and see what they're doing. So, and for Off-Broadway, for sure, it's not really an option for the Off-Broadway, which is where, a lot of the create new work and the new musicals and the things that maybe go to Broadway, maybe don't go to Broadway, but that's where a lot of things sort of start out. I think the cinematic filming of Off-Broadway is not something that's in the future. So the people have to come back. Like, I don't know when they're going to feel comfortable, but hopefully it made people want to go see it in person whenever they can access a ticket and afford a ticket, but also it gave them something in this time of like no theater at all. But it's not going to be an option for every company and every production. Right. So it can't be the norm. Yeah. And so I think it's okay to have some shows that exist in both places because not everything will.
Yeah.
Good point.
And I just wanted, to say, like, and I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back.
May I jump in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. In the 80s, they had this thing that PBS did called American Playhouse, where an off-Broadway theater would do their play, Second Stage or Manhattan Theater Club, whatever, and then they would film it for PBS. And so there exists John Malkovich and Gary Sinise doing True West, you know, and you can still see it because it's sort of like an archive, but it happened after the production. So it ran on Off-Broadway or whatever, but then they would film. And they would do it not from the back of the house. They would, you know, set up cameras and do it. You know, it didn't not big production values at all. Just on the set with the actors. It was like Playhouse 90. Remember those? That's in the 50s. You know, where they would just Patty Chayefsky and people would write these teleplays, and they were filmed black and white cameras. Some of them they think they did live, and then you could see the mistakes that would happen as they were jumping around from the cameras. So. It is not live theater, but it is a placeholder. You know, probably a terrible metaphor would be like it's methadone, you know, and not heroin, which is, you know, what I would want, you know. And so, you know, theatrical addiction that I have. And so it won't, I can't believe it would become the norm, and that's just me. It's just, and it's always been a rarefied, because Broadway's too expensive and Off-Broadway is limited. There's shorter runs and less seats. So it's always been a rarefied kind of medium. And so the people that love it and want to see it live will still seek it out, in my opinion.
What I was going to say, ultimately, though, it's our responsibility as creators. Our responsibility as creators is to create content that is imperative to the lives of our audiences. And if we don't do that, then you're right. Then we're not vital. But the way that we become vital is by honoring our responsibility to actually create work that is meaningful and that actually says something and it has the capacity to move energy within the human spirit. So it won't happen if we don't let it.
Very true. With that being said, what do you think about us sustaining in the sustainable future for theater, you know, with no federal or state aid, you know, and the projections of only 20 or 50% in the audience? A lot of shows, you know, at first we were, my production, we were talking about that we were going to start probably in January when they said Broadway would start. And then we thought, well, how could you even start in January? That's the time when shows are hoping they can make it through to sustain, you know, like if we can make it after holidays. So we don't want to start, you know, when we don't know if we'll make it. What do you think is going to happen with only 25 to 50% capacity? What do you think that's going to mean for the arts going through, moving forward?
Yeah, I don't, it would be temporary, in my opinion, that they'll come up with a vaccine, or, you know, there'll be, you know, enough people have gotten it already. I mean, it's just that this is, even in 1918, it lasted a year and a half. You know what I mean? The pandemic swept, they had, and they didn't close the Broadway theaters or the theaters. They didn't have the medicine that we have now. But it still was a year and a half, 1918, 1919, and it killed millions and millions of people. We have been a little bit more prescient about it and kind of closed everything down. And so there won't be 50 million people who've died of this thing. But so these are temporary things, in my opinion, that will, yeah, there'll be 25 people or 50%, or, you know, You know, there's got to be, you know, in my opinion, to subsidies, you know, like everybody's negotiating with their landlords going, you gotta lower my rent. I don't have a job, you know? And
Right.
so theater should have that same, that same opportunity. Lower the rents,
Yep.
you know?
I
You
think,
know? Go ahead, Beth.
I think an in-person capacity limit is challenging. It could open, I think that if sort of the community can come together and be creative, and there was a way to, again, not replace the idea of live theater, but simultaneously stream that performance into people's homes so that there is an audience, and it's not just in your 500 seat theater, Patrick, which is where you were performing, it'd be 125 people at 25% capacity, all spaced out, not even like deliberately clumped together to try to like give you the illusion of we have somewhat full house, but they're all sitting in the center. But I think it could be an opportunity, again, assuming this community can work together and be creative and think outside the box. If we can somehow either live stream or just broadcast the show while there's a smaller house, you still get a live thing, you still get a tangible something in the moment. You're still in the moment with it, but it'll be hard.
I also think we have to talk about the sustainability of the artists, right? Because ultimately, Off-Broadway had already gotten to a place where you could not make a living as an artist working Off-Broadway. No. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that you could be an artist living in New York City, working Off-Broadway consistently, and not make a living for yourself. Maybe this is TMI. It's not my TMI, it's somebody else's. But there's an actress who has 2 Oscars who did a show Off-Broadway a few years ago, $500 a week. Let me say that again. $500 a week for a woman with 2 Oscars. That's not sustainable. That's not how so we have to figure out a model where theater is being honest with itself, right? And giving the artists who are on the ground floor their financial due.
Well, that brings us to funding. Are you guys familiar with the Save Our Stages Act? Now that is for venues, but it just at least starts. If the government is going to start giving aid to venues who need money, and that money is not just for the venues, but is also to give to the people working and to continue to pay for their, rent so that they can be open and sustain throughout the end of the pandemic. If we can start with that, then hopefully it'll start to trickle down and they'll remember that they need us as well. But are you guys familiar with the Save the Stages Act? Or do you want me to explain a little bit about it?
Well, I wasn't before you mentioned it, before we started. So if you want to be more explaining.
Yes. Okay. Well, so first of all, again, I love that. And I'm going to touch on this for just a second because we're getting ready to stop. But Senators Amy Klobuchar, Democratic, and Republican John
Klobuchar.
There we go. Klobuchar and John Corn. Did I not put it down right? Child, I didn't write it. What? Hold on a second. We have a Democratic and a Republican senator. They started a bill that authorizes the Small Business Administration to make grants to eligible live venue operators, producers, promoters, or talent representatives to address the economic effects of COVID-19. And some of it could be up to $12 million, depending on the venue, for 1 or 2 times to aid in paying for all of the things that they need. So I'm grateful for that.
Me too.
I mean, it's not really trickling down to, hopefully they'll start to trickle down to the actual artists, because like you said, it'll be great if you can sustain where we work, then how many of us are going to be able to work? And then what about us who are still left here without anything? And before I get off of that, I want to go back to Rogi, to Rogi Banks, to ask, is there anything that you can leave with us to let us know what would you advise to help with what's going on with our mental while we're dealing with all of this?
And some of it has been discussed here already. I've heard hope, right? Patrick, just, having hope that this too shall pass, right? because we've been talking about church on here. So this too shall pass. And since you brought up the funding, I do hope that pulls through. But when I think about other opportunities, another Howard alum, Breen, who's a co-founder of Broadway Advocacy Coalition. And so where they would do work that supports, that may be used to perpetuate racism or unfairness, and out of thinking about protest TV, why not make sure that we have, because I know Christopher brought that up, making sure that you have the discussions that need to be had during this downtime with the venues. There's no reason why when we do return to this, that the same structures that existed and the construct that existed before, it shouldn't happen. Off-Broadway actors should not, I've always been taught when I was being trained that you can make a living being an artist. A lot of other parents didn't believe that, but my theater instructor in high school, Marilyn McCormick, she told us it doesn't matter. And that's how I learned tech production, because I always knew that I could find a job and make a living doing what I love. And so that is what I would say during this time. You know, I love the ideas that are being generated. And I think that they are very helpful. And as far as moving forward, stay hopeful, but also having those necessary, right? Making good trouble, in the words of John Lewis, and making sure that when we return back, that it's a huge shift. Not just we're just happy to be back, but what did we do differently? What ideas were we brewing and did we bring together to make sure that not only are we enjoying, you know, having, getting our checks, but making sure that everybody, you know, can get a piece of the pie.
Anything else anybody would like to leave before we are getting ready to be done? Anything?
She said it all.
I said. That's when you're in with the doctor. That's why you're in with the doctor.
Just hearing you out, I'm like, man, I miss Twitter. Come back.
So we're getting ready to say goodbye to this conversation on this platform. But please continue the conversations amongst other people. Please continue the conversations with the people who can make change. Please continue the conversations with yourself, giving yourself the hope. Please stay well. Please stay safe. And hopefully we'll all be back to the theater on some way, in some capacity, in the close future. It's been awesome. Thanks again, Noel, for this wonderful platform. Thank you everyone who was part of this conversation. And we wish you all the best.
Pleasure.
Dude was getting into his car and the cop pulled up and like literally was like holding on to him and started shooting.
Usually I try to do a little fluff. I try to do a little, thank y'all for coming, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. I'm on a whole different tip tonight.
I want to thank you for another week with What's Up Roadie. How you doing?
What do you call a curfew when you locking people down for 24 hours? They encourage businesses not to open.
Let's just go ahead and dive right in. Thank y'all for coming in and kicking it with Kirk. Let's go into it.
There was an incident that I had one time that I actually ended up dumping a girl over a racial profiling incident that happened to me.
You just gotta love people, man. We gotta love each other, and it's time to get close with your family.
But didn't you sign up to protect and serve? Didn't you sign up to serve the community, even if that means, unfortunately, you may not make it home? Isn't that what you signed up for as an officer? Or did you sign up for a cushy job with a check where you could terrorize people?
Is what do you say to the people who are peacefully protesting and they're being tear gas, bombed, shot rubber bullets at, and being beaten?
We might have chose this life and whatever, but we also chose one of the only fields that is guaranteed to not stop based on any natural disaster.
How long do we stay quiet and don't say anything? How long do we do this for?
Make a complete stop, you take a left turn, and the cop lights come on.
Every single right, basic human right that Black Americans have gotten in this country, we had to fight for.
We're on vacation outside, we want to go out to Vegas for the weekend, so that's what we did. And the cop's like, well, your license plate says California. Why are you out here?
Best thing that I've learned, hold on to your family.